Hello, everyone tuning in. This is Mark here for Hopped, and I am here with Cambria as well. We are here at the Bruery in Placentia, and we're actually in their sensory room. We're here with Alex Canales. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, my name's Alex. I work here at the lab at the Bruery. I'm one of the analysts here, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to do a sensory today.
Awesome. And as you guys can see here, we are in the sensory room. We have quite a few cool things. What is this chart we were looking at on the wall over here?
Yeah, so these are, it's pretty much like a color wheel, we like to call it, of all of the potential flavors you can get from any beer style. A lot of these you'll find, especially in like this estery side, a lot of off flavors will come from that, and so this is a really good indication of what to expect from any off flavors in beers.
Awesome. And can you walk us through what Cambria and I are going to be doing this afternoon?
Yeah, of course. So if we come over here, I've selected a few beers out here from all of our brands. So we have 3 brands here. We have Bruery brand, we have Offshoot brand, and then we have our Taru brand. And each one is different in its own, but the Bruery is the more like lager, Belgian, darker stouts. We have our Offshoot, which focuses only on IPAs. And then we have our Taru brand, which focuses on our sours. So we'll just be going through all of them, and we'll be pretty much just testing our senses today to see if we can accurately identify the flavor profiles in the beer, if we can catch any off flavors, or testing that carbonation to see if the beer is still stable and is still good to enjoy.
Awesome. And we got Joshua asking, what place is this? So for anyone who just tuned in, we are in the sensory room at the Bruery. Awesome. So shall we get started?
Yeah, so I believe the IPA is probably the best one to start with.
Awesome.
So Relax is one of our core IPA beers. It's a hazy IPA with some good orange citrus notes. So you're really just looking for like that fresh squeezed orange type of smell and taste. So
Awesome. And we're going to have Cambria be our first guinea pig, and then we'll kind of switch off and see what we're all tasting, smelling, seeing on these.
Show you how to appropriately taste a beer.
And we have another question from Panos Papadog. What temperature are we drinking these at?
So these are all stored at 8 degrees Celsius in our fridge, just so that we can speed up the cool process. But each beer on our labels tells you the adequate temperature to drink them at. So for example, this stout will be at 55 degrees Fahrenheit is the best temperature to drink them.
Awesome. And we have another question. Can anyone visit or experience the sensory room? Do you guys do any type of tours here or anything?
Yes and no. Tours are definitely welcome. I would say definitely get in touch with us first if you want a tour. That's a big one because we're usually pretty busy. But my whole team and I were very, very welcoming, and we love teaching people, and we love people that are willing to learn. So honestly, as long as you give us a heads up, we'll most likely have you.
Awesome.
So this one's going to be for you.
Thank you.
And the best way to do this, so I recommend you swirl the beer first. You can even cup it to try to contain that aroma in the cup, but you swirl the beer, and then you just go right into it. And when I first started doing the sensories, I actually closed my eyes a lot of the times and really just tried to zone in on my nose and what I was smelling. So for this one, I do get those nice orange flavors. I do have a little bit of oxidation on here. That's kind of that slight sweetness that you smell. That's the beer oxidizing. But overall, it smells really good to me. It smells true to brand. I then go and look at the color of the beer. This beer, you're looking for more of that golden yellow color. When you get something on the lighter end, or if the beer is clearing up a lot, that usually is a good indication that a lot of oxidation is happening, or the beer is getting to that point of the end of its life, essentially. So what I do first, after swirling the beer, when I take my first sip, it's kind of hard to explain, but you kind of hold your nose, you drink it, but you're trying not to taste it. You release with your mouth, like you blow out, and that really brings out all the flavors in the beer. So, and I get all the beer, like all that taste in the back of my throat, and it lingers through my tongue up to the roof of my mouth, and eventually to my nose, where I can definitely tell that this beer is oxidizing, as I said it during the aroma, but it's actually holding up really well.
You do get that orange flavor, absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna get in between you guys so I can get Cambria as well.
Why not?
So, do you want to go ahead and?
Yes. Well, I have never done the blowout method with this, and you do get a lot more of those
still,
flavors.
oh, I didn't know if it was
just having
frozen.
That in the background. It's my phone's frozen, I think.
Oh no, mine is. There we go. We're back in. Sorry,
We're
guys.
back in for everyone that was concerned. I definitely feel like, I mean, you do get that. It feels like a citrus grove, but in the best way possible.
Right.
And definitely those really heavy orange flavors. Also definitely hazy if you can't tell from the colors, but also from the mouthfeel. Mm-hmm. It also still does have that really nice, the perfect level of carbonation for a hazy, I feel like.
I agree too. And this beer was packaged on the 23rd of last month, so.
Wow, so that is holding up.
Almost a month, yeah.
Yeah, that's holding up really, really well.
Awesome.
Would you like me to film you trying this?
Why don't you get me on the next beer?
Sure. I'll just drink this one?
Yeah, so we don't have to.
So let's see.
If you want to flip it around.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a hoppy rye lager. We don't do a lot of rye lagers in general, so this is definitely one of those that was on the better end in my opinion. For those who have never tried rye, when I first tried it, I was not about it. It's very strong. I think it's almost kind of has this perfumey aspect to it, but when you mix it with the right hops and the right style of beer, I think it balances really well.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's in a lager, I think it plays out really well. It's very balanced. But same thing here. We'll just kind of swirl it around a little bit, get the aroma going.
Very, very fragrant.
Mm-hmm.
And we have gotten a question from someone of, while these are not glass, is it better to drink and sample out of plastic cups or glass?
So the best answer is glass. The only reason we don't do glass here is actually because our glassware keeps breaking. Literally, that's the only reason. We still have them. We just try to not use them. Our dishwasher just does not like glass and just keeps breaking them every single time. So just to avoid that, we switched over to the plastic cups. But my recommendation is definitely trying them out of, especially if you're doing tasters, definitely glass tasters.
Yeah. Now, on this beer, given that it's rye, I mean, the malt profile is really strong. It smells like you're stepping into a brewery on a brew day.
Yes, definitely agree. I do get a bit of oxidation on this beer too. Again, it's that sweet profile that you kind of get at the end. It's a very subtle type of sweet. But overall, I think this beer is holding up very well too. I think there was a little bit of carbonation loss. We packaged this beer a bit ago.
It's Cumulus Rye.
Yeah, Cumulus Rye lager. One that we don't typically do, but I think it was really good when we packaged it. We packaged it a few months ago, I want to say. I just can't read the date on it. But yeah, we like to experiment here. Like I said before, we do a lot of trial and error here. And rye is definitely one that we've had a lot of error with in the past. But this is probably one of the first ones we've actually done that has come out really well.
Are there specific errors that you notice when you use a rye malt compared to just your standard lager?
I think it really also kind of goes back to what yeast you're using too. A lot of different yeasts provide a lot of different off flavors. It can go in really different directions. It really just depends on what you're using. But I think we've had more success with not using rye malt, and to kind of better answer your question, that's why I was like, it's a really difficult one to work with and to work with it well.
Yeah.
We have worked with it in the past where it comes out great, it looks like it's doing good, and then a month later it's trash.
Yeah.
So we try to avoid that. But yeah, rye is definitely one of the harder ones in my opinion. It's also not a very popular malt for a lot of people. Like I said before, it's a very strong kind of perfumey one. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't like rye.
Do you, and because like you said, we don't see them that often, but I feel like I almost see it utilized more in ales. Is that something you found to be true?
I want to say, yeah, we've done rye stouts before, like rye barreled stouts, but that's really the only major success that we've had is using them in stouts, which again is ales. So yeah, but yeah, this is probably the first lager we've done with rye, and I like it. It's pretty good.
Why don't I flip the camera on that Cambria for the
Sure.
beer?
And
go for it.
excuse me, but I was too busy typing and too excited. What were the tasting notes you got from this?
I got for me.
For both of you. I'm curious what you got for that tasting
Try it
note.
again. Like I said, I don't know if you want to turn back around.
Sure.
Also, apologies. It seems like my phone is freezing a good amount.
That's okay.
So, like I said, there is a very strong malt scent on the nose. It smells like when you are walking into a brewery on a brew day, and there's just that like breakfasty oatmeal going on.
A little bit of bready as well.
Yeah, definitely really bready. My taste is not as nuanced, so if you gave this to me, I don't think I could tell you that it's starting to oxidize a little
I feel like
bit.
I get some like green tea. That's why I was curious. That's like the tasting note I get from it.
Definitely. I think even you said to expect something a little more fragrant. The at the start of it.
And you know, over time, a lot of our beers, well, just beer in general too, especially when it's heavily adjuncted or anything like that, like over time, a lot of flavors will fall off.
Yeah.
Or sometimes one flavor will be overbearing in the beginning and can't really get all the other flavors, but then over time, that flavor now balances out and you have a really good idea of each flavor in that beer and it all works really well together. So sometimes even if it might seem really strong at first, give it some time and it will taste better maybe like another week or so or something like that. Again, depending on the beer. But we've noticed that a lot with our stouts where at first they'll be, especially when we use them strawberry or raspberry flavoring, at first we think we're using appropriate levels and it smells great, tastes great, it's really balanced. And then maybe over time, like kind of on its like 9 month, 1 year kind of mark, we start getting that medicinal flavor of those like strawberry and raspberry. Because if you put fresh fruit, it tastes good, but you don't really get much off the aroma. So what we do, we'll add certain either, whether it's like a concentrate or whatever they want to use specifically, but they'll add that to kind of enhance that flavor, but then over time it does end up turning a little bit more medicinal and overpowers everything else from the beer. So it's really, it's a play on like what you're using and just making sure you're using appropriate amounts and just considering the fact that over time the flavors change.
Okay.
Let me turn it around so I can get both of you guys.
So this beer here, it's one of our newer ones. It's called Bruery, a Belgian-style honey ale, and I believe grapefruit, lime, orange peel, vanilla, and spices. So as you can tell, there's a lot going on in this beer. But because it is a Belgian-style ale, we are looking for that nice clarity that we see today. It's holding up really well. I can see a nice head of foam, meaning that the carbonation levels are really good. And with this one, when I first tried this beer, the orange peel was
You like take a breath, hold it on the back of your tongue, like it's so good. 10 out of 10.
And Alex, we are trying quite a few bottles today.
Yes.
And so obviously you have the recommended temperature on the bottle there.
Yes.
But do you have any, whether general or specific to any beer that we've had today, like cellaring recommendations for anyone who even might have one of these bottles at home?
Yeah, big time. So every beer that we make, the best storage is cold, storing it cold. Now, obviously, that might not be a case for a lot of people and they want to store it somewhere else. You can store our beers what we call ambiently, so at room temperature, for example. Although you have to take into account that when you store them at warmer temperatures, the beer will oxidize a lot faster and it will expire a lot quicker. So, for example, our offshoot brand, the life of an offshoot is 4 months. Like, that's as much as we've been able to accommodate for it. But we've noticed that even storing it in a fridge for a little bit more than 4 months, it's actually still okay. But if you stored it room temperature after 4 months, it's not good at all. So it really just depends on the beer. Stouts are definitely one of those that you can hang on room temperature for even more than a year. Although I do recommend holding them cold. Anything sour, you want it cold, like never store that ambiently. But yeah, and even our Brucicles too, which we'll try in a second here. Excuse me. Even our Brucicles, you do want to store these cold, although these can hang out for a little bit. I would say like the most I would leave them out room temperature is about a month. After that, put it in a fridge.
How can someone at home, I'll check. How can someone at home tell if their beer is starting to oxidize? Like when they taste it, like is that something they'd be able to tell by themselves?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say, again, depending on the beer, I'll just use an IPA for example. So the first thing I would suggest is look at the packaging date. It's always going to be at the bottom of the beer and it'll tell you when it's packaged, the month, day, years, how we do it. And depending on what date is, so for example, this was almost a month ago, the oxidation is something that you kind of have to train yourself to pick up, but typically oxidation will give you a more soft, sweet smell, like almost always in the aroma. And then when you are tasting the beer, it almost gives you more of a buttery feel to it. But almost always, you'll get it right off the aroma. If you have like a sweet, like something that doesn't make sense for the beer, and you're like, why is this beer smelling sweet? It's probably because it's oxidizing. But then we also hold all of our beers, like I've mentioned before, for quality purposes. So for example, if a customer, let's say, was holding onto a Black Tuesday and it was like 2 years that it was made and they want to pop it open and I don't know, maybe they're tasting something off, they can always message us at the lab and we have the beer on hand. So we'll go and sensory this beer and say, okay, like, yeah, actually, like, we don't catch any off flavors. Maybe it was just that particular bottle that they received, or, oh yeah, maybe you're right, like, this beer's not good anymore, not sellable, don't drink it. So it really, again, just depends on the beer that you have. Stouts last the longest, IPAs last the shortest amount of time. Belgians and lagers are just about the same, like 9 months is really like kind of cut off, and then sours 9 months to a year.
If someone does have that question for the lab about like if they have, for instance, if they've been cellaring a Black Tuesday, is the best way to get in contact and ask that question the Instagram, or how would they get in contact about that?
Honestly, really any platform. You can go on our Instagram. They're very good about replying to you pretty quickly on there. If you wanted something a little bit more formal, I believe we do have email contact information on our main website if you scroll all the way to the bottom. And that will just be directed to the appropriate person, whether it's our like fulfillment center purposes or whether it's lab or whatever department. It'll get to the right person.
Awesome. Should we move on to the next beer?
Yeah, of course.
I can go ahead and hold that. For those of you that are just joining, we're here with Alex Canales, who is the analytical lab tech at the Bruery in Placentia. And we are doing a sensory experience to be able to try some of the different brands at the Bruery. And so we've gone through a few from Offshoot, Teru, and also, have we gone through all three?
Not yet.
Not
this
yet.
Is the last Teru, but we'll be going through the Bruery steps.
Wonderful.
Yes. So this one that we're going to try right now. Give me one right here. So one of our major brands here, being Teru, is our Brucicles. They are a smoothie style beer. They have all been pasteurized, so there's no continuous fermentation, there's no spontaneous fermentation either, or anything, which a lot of our sours tend to have. So this beer is definitely going to be on that thicker side since it is a smoothie style beer. They like to play on that sweet and sour type of vibe, so you're definitely going to be getting that today. This one specifically was with raspberries, blueberries, vegan marshmallows, and vanilla.
Awesome. And is this kind of like, I see a rocket pop on the side of it.
Yeah, we came out with this during the 4th of July time.
Yeah.
So.
And given, we're obviously concerned about sight, these are probably the opposite of translucent.
Yes.
How do you tell if something is off on appearance for a beer that is so thick?
Yeah, so the biggest tell for any Brucicle is if you can either look at the bottom of them or sometimes it'll be pretty apparent chunks. You don't want chunks.
So when you get that pour and you just see
starts kind of a little bit
filler,
chunky, and you're just like, ooh. But I will say, I forgot to mention before, any person that is about to open a Brucicle, especially if it's been sitting for a while, invert it. Invert it at least 5 to 6 times before actually pouring it. So a lot of the times everything settles at the bottom, or if you have it flipped, it'll settle, the other way. So yeah, just invert it, get that mixture going, and then you should be fine. Awesome. This is probably one of my favorites too.
Okay, raspberries. Very prominent. What's crazy is, they very much nailed the rocket popsicle, and if you couldn't see it before, I don't know if rocket pop is the correct colloquial term, but that is what it tastes like, and that's something that Cambria and I are big fans of the Brucicle series because they are just such crazy beers. Ever since I think the DFG maybe was the first one that we had, and if you've tried it, and if not, I recommend getting here. The Baja Blast Brucicle is particularly insane in the best way possible. But yeah, it's crazy the flavors that you guys are able to achieve, and especially going for something like a Rocket Pop or a Baja Blast. I've always
really crazy like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. I'm going to be finishing this.
So this next one is our I'm Coconut's About You beer. It's pretty much a double barrel aged stout with coconut and vanilla, I believe. I don't think there's anything else in there. Yeah. And so this one, especially when you're working with coconut can go one of two ways. Coconut can either fall off over time or be insanely strong over time. And this beer in particular, especially in stouts, we notice that coconut typically falls off over time. So whenever you do get a coconut stout, just in general, like with any brewery, I recommend drinking that sooner rather than later to definitely, because it's more fresh that way, and you'll get exactly what the goal was. You'll get it from the minute you purchase that bottle, especially if it was freshly packaged. Like, you definitely want to drink it right then and there.
And one thing we were talking about earlier is whether a beer is pasteurized or not, you have a percentage cutoff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You mean
I think you said maybe 16% or something was a cutoff. how is that?
For the ABV. Sorry, I was
Yeah.
like 5%. Yes. So when we're going through the phase of testing our beer, our rule of thumb here is if the ABV on a beer, specifically a stout, is over 16%, it typically does not need to be pasteurized. But if a beer falls under that 16% ABV, then we most likely have to pasteurize it, just to prevent any growth of bacteria, essentially. Because when you pasteurize it, it kills all of that.
Yeah.
This one's holding up really well
Yeah.
too.
It's also, as you said, achieves the most important thing for a coconut beer, and it doesn't taste like sunscreen. Because that is just, yeah.
I've had beers like that before, and it was not a good time.
Yeah, it's very easy to overdo it
Yeah.
with coconut.
We do have this one beer, I think it's called Joyride. That one literally tastes like that Almond Joy candy, and that one's super coconutty, but for some reason it works so well because it almost tastes like it's a mixture of coconut and like maple syrup together. So.
Yeah, balance is important.
And then I have one last one for you guys to try.
Last one. Can't
This one I'm pretty excited
Sure.
about. So if no one is aware, or whoever is aware, anything, Black Tuesday is what we're most well known for here at the brewery. We love barrel-aged beers. We love barreling. And we love holding beer for a long time and reusing it. And this is one of those examples. So this is one of those adjunct beers we did. And this particular Black Tuesday is made with red wine barrels.
And in terms of your normal Black Tuesday, I mean, I say normal. Every Black Tuesday is exceptional and different.
Right.
But is red wine barrels pretty regular for Black Tuesday? Do you swap out the barrels, or how does that work?
Not at all. So we basically what we do is we'll take the original Black Tuesday barrels, and then we will then put them into red wine barrels to get that red wine character. But we don't reuse any barrels here. So once they're done, it's done. But for this specific, we came out with 4. It was gin barrel aged, red wine, tequila, and Scotch barrel aged. My personal favorite was Scotch because I'm a huge Scotch person, but the red wine, like I was mentioning to Mark before, I was a wine drinker, and so I feel like this is a pretty good representation of that, getting those characters in.
So, Cambria, what are you getting off of it?
You do get the red wine, which is really, really cool to be able to experience that. And one of the things that I think is really cool about the brewery compared to even smaller breweries in general is the specific amazing barrels you're able to get. We've had a Fernet barrel-aged beers. I know you had that for the anniversary, which was really interesting. And I'm not a huge red wine drinker, but in this format, it's so good. And you get all the best parts of red wine, but also beer. And I think that stands out, like to be able to get those red wine flavors and those notes, but just as a way to accentuate the flavor of Black Tuesday, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I think this one too, because that Black Tuesday has a really like deep chocolate vibe to it, and I think it mixes so well with the red wine, because red wine also a lot of the times has that sweetness to it, which might be overbearing, but mixing it with Black Tuesday I think has been the best decision we've ever made. It's really, really good.
Alex, do you remember specifically for this variant what type of red wine it was? What type of barrel?
To be honest with you, I do not.
Okay.
But I can find the answer for you, and I can let you know about that one.
Yeah, I was just curious because obviously, depending on what type of red wine, I'm sure it's gonna
yeah,
vary
big time.
quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the range of what we do here. I mean, as you can see, we like to experiment with a lot of different flavors, and we like to put a lot in our beers, but sometimes we like to keep it simple and go from there. But yeah, and that's been our sensory.
Awesome. Before we end the live, well, first off, we want to say thank you to Alex. We've been able to talk to her all day, and she's going to be our Women in Beer interview for October, and we're going to have a cool video coming out in addition to this live. So thank you for spending all the time with us today.
Thank you guys for coming. My pleasure.
But I did want to see if anyone in the live right now had any specific questions. we'll stay on for a few minutes longer and see if we can answer anything. We've gotten some cool ones so far, specific to the sensory room, as well as just some beer questions. So we'll keep it up for a minute or two if anyone has questions. And for now, I'll go ahead and just look at the damage we've been able to do today.
Do you have, between all of these beers we were able to sample, for you, what is your favorite one of these, or what's your standout?
Black Tuesday.
Black Tuesday Wine Barrel.
I'm, man. See, it's a tough one too because it really just depends on what I'm feeling that day. Like I was saying, in the summer it's been so hot, and like a really nice cold IPA sounds awesome, or just a really nice fresh lager sounds great. But I feel like I always kind of lean towards more of our darker stouts right now, especially entering this fall and colder time. A nice stout with a good amount of spice to hit that back of your throat just warms you up real nice. It feels really good. But honestly, I still kind of go back to what I said. Like a Belgian will always be my favorite, I think. Mm-hmm. I love it so much. I love the character. It's easy, it's not too harsh, and kind of drink it at any time of the year. I think that's what I like most about it. Absolutely.
Awesome. So I don't see any questions here. So we've been here for a while, so we're gonna let Alex get back to her day job. But thank you everyone who tuned in, and recommend just coming down to the brewery, and hopefully this has kind of like expanded all of the work that goes into literally every single beer that you see here and drink here. So hope this has been helpful, and like I said, look out for her interview in October. Cheers, guys.